Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is Braver New Worlds, a podcast about the stories we need to tell for the future we want to see. And I'm your host, Nathan Young. And in this podcast, we explore the power of storytelling, connection, and leadership to help us rewrite the narratives that shape our lives. In today's episode, I'm joined by someone I've known for quite a while. It's Dr. Jennifer Gunsaullus, PhD, more commonly known as Dr. Jenn, with two N's. Dr. Jenn is a sociologist, intimacy coach, and TEDx speaker. She's also the author of From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women. She has a long-running YouTube series, In the Den with Dr. Jenn, and she's been featured in everything from Forbes to Cosmo and works with CEOs around the world through the YPO network. She's also a black belt in karate, which is something I didn't know, or I think I knew once upon a time and forgot about. And so I kind of regret not asking her about that in the interview, but we talk about a lot of other great stuff too. We definitely get into sex and relationships, but we also talk about vulnerability, dating, emotional literacy, navigating identity, being a multi-passionate entrepreneur, and what it means to challenge these dominant narratives that we're all living with, both in our culture and in our own heads. And if you want to know about my dating life, Jenn asked me some questions about it at the end, so I spilled the beans there. This is an episode that was recorded over a year ago, so there might be a couple old references in there, but for the most part, the real substance of the interview is just as relevant for today as it was when we recorded it. I'm really grateful for her for being one of my very first interviews on the show, and even though it took me a year to finally get it out, it's here, and I'm really happy about the conversation we had. So let's dive in. Hello, Dr. Jenn. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure, Nathan.
All right. Well, let's just dive right into it. Just in your own words, just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you see the work that you do.
Yeah. So I'm a sociologist by education, specializing in topics around sex and intimacy and sexual health and communication and relationships and body image, self-esteem, all of those topics. And at this point, my main focus areas are one, I've had a private practice for the past 16, 17 years doing relationship and intimacy coaching with individuals and couples. And my real passion all along and how I got started in this field is the public speaking. And so I travel around a lot and speak and facilitate for groups around intimacy and marriage and healthy marriage and communication, but also around vulnerability and authenticity and living a meaningful life and how to cultivate deeper, healthy, mindful relationships in all your relationships. And I published a book a little while back and do a lot of media work. So all of my stuff, though, really is around reducing shame and stigma and misinformation and increasing empowerment and communication and happiness and fulfillment at really those deep levels of what we most want as humans to experience and share with other humans.
Cool. We talked about this a little bit before we hit the record. We've known each other for a while. And I was thinking when I very first met you was you did that TED Talk.
My gosh, that's right. One of it was my first TEDx talk. Yes, that's right. You're in San Diego. Yeah, you were on the team and you did the recording, didn't you?
I was just helping out. They called me the unfucker. So I just have good event skills. So when something was messed up, I was like, all right, I know how to fix this.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. You unfucked things. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That should totally be on your resume. Yeah.
I know, right? So I was just kind of the go-to, all right, go fit, something's wrong here, go help. It's all right, I'll lift this heavy thing, I'll figure out what's going on with the recording, I'll try and get the crowd going over there. So that was my role.
That's awesome. How did you get involved with that TEDx group here?
So I had worked with the other TEDx group. They were kind of a subset of the one that did, because I was a TEDx Women, right? And so
it was an international thing, all happening at the same time or the same few days. TEDx Women, all around women speakers and women, specific topics. So
and so that was kind of I got ushered in there because I was doing the storytelling stuff and I was helping people tell their stories, and then they just well, you want to help out with this and coach some speakers. So I had helped out with the other TEDx event that led into that, and then I think we went to no, it wasn't your house we went to afterwards. Somebody had a really nice house up on Mount Soledad afterwards.
No, sadly, that was not my house. No, it still would not be my house, sadly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was one of the other speakers. She's a professor at UCSD.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So So all this is to say yes, we've known each other for a while. And so I've never gotten the whole story on how you got involved in this work and how you started doing this. And also how it's evolved over the years, because I've been seeing you on social media and you doing your own media stuff. And that event, you talked very specifically about sex, but
Yeah.
you've expanded quite a bit from there too.
Yeah. So a little context. So I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia in a small town, was raised Catholic, definitely got I was born in 73. So 70s and 80s in particular, got a lot of the good girl messages. A side note, I look back every once in a while, like the Love Boat reruns come on or something, a show from the 80s. And I was like, God, this is the version of like gender that we were exposed to. It was so horribly sexist and gendered. So I grew up with all of that. Very loving, supportive household. We did not talk about sex though, but otherwise very, very stable, loving household and happy. And when I went to college, my sophomore year, my roommate became a sexual health peer educator. So where you're like the RAs bring you in to their dorms and residential halls and you do condom demonstrations and safer sex talks and you go into health classrooms, things like that. And so she became that. And I saw like what fun she was having. And I actually at the time was horrified, as many of us, to do public speaking. And so many of my classes at the end of the semester, you had to do a group project and part of it was an oral presentation. And I remember I was just so mortified by that and so nervous. And so part of this was, I was like, oh, I could join the sexual health peer educators. Like it's fun. Like the topic's like sexy and fun and cool. And I get to learn public speaking skills. So, and I like to joke, I figured if you could get up there and talk about sex, you could talk about anything. And it turned out I just never stopped talking about sex 32 years later. So, yeah. So then over time it's evolved. So I did start with the sexual health focus, especially for college students and some healthy relationships around that. And then I went and got my PhD in sociology and focused on gender, sexuality theory, marriage, demographics around that. And my dissertation had to do with HIV prevention programs targeting adult women around New York State. So again, it was very sexual health focused. And then 21 years ago, I moved to San Diego and really got into mindfulness, meditation, holistic health, mind, body, spirit connection, self-esteem, self-worth work. And that then became infused because I was realizing that like in my dissertation research, I was interviewing these educators that were working with these women in ethnic minority communities, African-American, Latino, Asian immigrant, Native American, that were really in the early 2000s. These women and heterosexual women were really getting hit with HIV/AIDS and they didn't know where it was coming from or what was going on.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So CDC funding was going to these organizations and these like peer-run organizations for these educators to do programs in their communities. And one of the things that always stood out to me is I had asked them the question, like, if you only had 5 minutes, you had a group of adult women, you had 5 minutes, you could only emphasize one thing around sexual health, what would it be? And so coming from the background, I was coming from teaching college students, it'd be like condom use. Like wrap yourself, protect yourself. But most of these educators, and most of them are women, said topics around self-esteem and self-worth and letting the woman know she's worthy and that she's worth taking care of. And I was like, oh. So then fast forward a little bit, I moved to San Diego and got into holistic health and mindfulness and realized, oh yeah, we don't think we're worth taking care of. We can't ask for our needs. We can't negotiate condom use. We don't even pause and take the time to take care of ourselves, especially as women in this society. So that became an evolution. And then I started getting much more interested in what I was calling mindful intimacy and vulnerability and how to have those really uncomfortable conversations with yourself and with other people, but that are in integrity with your values and who you want to be in this world and the happiness and connection you deserve. So that's evolved over time. And at this point, I still talk about the nitty gritty, as I call it, of sexual stuff sometimes. I do anonymous Q&As after my talks, and people will, write on note cards. And these are adults. And these are also like high level CEOs and their spouses. And so they'll write questions like, what happens in anal when you can only get it halfway in? I'll have like questions like that. And then I'll also have like, how do I get my partner to look at me in the eyes during lovemaking? Like it runs the whole gamut. Or like, what's the best position for women to be able to orgasm? I'm always, that nitty gritty sexual stuff is always there, and always comes up. But my real passion at this point is the vulnerability and the emotional intimacy piece, because I truly think the most beautiful thing we could share with another human being is being able to let our armor down that we have up over our hearts to protect ourselves and let another human being see us and know us and love us and accept us in all our human beauty and messiness, and being able to create the same safety for someone else to do it. So I think it's the most beautiful thing we can do, and it's the scariest thing we can do.
Yeah. Okay. So many threads I want to pull.
That was a lot. I know. It was like a lot. Because you're like, well, give me your whole
life
career
story.
trajectory.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it has been a while.
Yeah, totally. Okay. But wait, so the thing that was, I'm like, there was that. So well, I'm intrigued how like in college, just to put yourself out there, I'm just imagining myself in college, that would have been like terrifying for me. But like you sort of felt comfortable with that. But I'm wondering if there's a thread there too of like, what was like the sort of discomforts maybe you were feeling around sex back then, and like how has that evolved?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One, I was not having sex, not intercourse. I was doing lots of other sex things, but I had my first boyfriend at 17, and then had like 4 kind of in a row of like serial monogamy for like a good 8 years, that I was always with a boyfriend. We'd break up, and then there'd be somebody kind of waiting in the wings who I was friends with, and then would start dating. But I did not have actually sexual intercourse for the first time till I was 25.
Oh, wow.
And it was by choice. One thing that I know stood out with me, like when I was a high school student and then clearly a college student as well, is like I was always very aware of consequences and making good choices. So for whatever reason, I think my prefrontal cortex was more developed. It also meant I was a buzzkill. I didn't drink. I wasn't invited to parties, not in high school, because like I would be the buzzkill of like, why are you drinking and making stupid choices right now? Like, why would you? I'd be like, I don't understand the youth of today. So I was a total buzzkill because I was like, just rational and logical. And it's not like because my parents pounded it in me. It's just what made sense to me. Yeah. So I also wasn't drinking. So I started drinking and having intercourse like within a month or 2 of each other when I was 25 in grad school. But in college itself, I thankfully had boyfriends in general who didn't push me. So we did lots of other sexual things. And because we weren't having intercourse, we practiced mutual masturbation, or, we'd watch some porn together, or we'd do role playing with each other.
Okay.
The old priest confessioner or doctor and patient, so much more sort of kinky in some ways stuff, because we were thinking outside the box, because I wasn't having intercourse. And my main reason was I was afraid I could get pregnant, which of course could happen. If I got pregnant, I knew I would get an abortion, and I didn't feel like I could emotionally handle that. So I didn't have intercourse till I felt like I was old enough to be able to emotionally handle it.
Okay.
Of the consequences, to be able to emotionally handle the consequences.
Yeah. That's so.
I don't talk about this that much, actually.
No, cool. Well, thank you. I'm glad you shared it. I'm so intrigued by, when I think of like my early 20s, I was just stupid. And I think that's the case for a lot of young people. Like you're just kind of like stupid and insecure, and that's all just kind of coming out. And it sounds like, I don't know, were you like not necessarily challenged by that?
You know what I think it was? A few years ago, pulled out my old journals from my early 20s, like 22, like when I was starting grad school. And I almost didn't recognize myself. I was so angsty and had so much negative self-talk and was beating myself up, and which is truly just not that I think I'm perfect or that I don't, dislike things in my life or my body, particularly as a almost 52-year-old woman. But I was just like mean. And I wasn't nice to myself, and I'm just not like that anymore. So I definitely had all of that. The best thing I can come up with of why is I had a strong sense of myself and what was right and wrong for me. For whatever reason, it was more important to me to stay true to me and that sense of self than give in to peer pressure or to do other things that then I'm like, but why would I do that? It's not, honestly, a lot of times it was just a logical thing. Maybe because my dad's an engineer or something. Like I was like, why would I make poor choices for myself?
Okay.
This is illogical. Now, I did have to figure out how to give myself space to grow and take risks. And that was its own process then of letting go of that childhood training, I think probably from my dad, particularly of taking risks. And I had to intentionally then let myself out of my comfort zone and fear zone to live a much bigger, fuller life and take risks, even though I know there could be consequences or I could get hurt or something.
Okay. Tell me.
Yeah.
Now.
You know what? I think it first showed up. I think I really started looking at that in like around 30 when I moved to San Diego and really started doing the personal growth stuff. And the first time I remember it popping up was around like finances and money. Like, what's your relationship with money? And realizing that I definitely had a scarcity mentality and a not trusting mentality around money. and around just and physical safety. And I had absolutely gotten that from my dad. So that was the first place it was showing up. And so then over time, it was intentionally like, okay, yeah, I don't like being on motorcycles with other people, but you know what? I'm going to do a little ride around the neighborhood because I trust this person. I'm not going to go on the highway with them because that is stupid. And however, I will, bit by bit do things out of my comfort zone just to live a fuller life, and then I started drinking at 25, started hooking up and playing around that way, was traveling more to other countries and getting out of my comfort zone. So it was sort of bit by bit. And lucky for me is I had a group of girlfriends in graduate school that helped sort of usher me into my coming of age in my mid-20s. And it was a time when I felt ready for it, but I had this like supportive, fun, more life experienced group of women that were just like lovely and fun. And we drank and had parties and we did our statistics homework together and, and like all of it in grad school. It really was, if I didn't have them, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it would have happened in the same way.
Yeah. What I'm hearing from all this is like, you just had good support structures all along the way, it sounds like.
It's a combination of the good support structures and then something which I think is maybe the combination of good childhood support structure and then just some, genetic fluke of just sort of confidence in myself and just of like knowing myself that my values matter more. And for whatever reason, the ability to sit with the social and emotional discomfort of saying no to peer pressure, which is really, really freaking hard. I was just talking about this a couple nights ago with my boyfriend's kids. He has a son that's 11 and a daughter who's 13, just about 14. And because I was sharing, we do those decks of cards where you pull out like reflection questions and conversations questions. I get them. Like every year I've been getting a new deck for them and we do it over dinner when I'm up there. But I was using that as a teaching moment specifically of how hard it is to stand up to peer pressure and how uncomfortable it is. And just to say no, no, and it's awkward and everybody's uncomfortable. And I'm like, no. And then I get a little angry and I can feel it. I can still feel it like in my chest and in my solar plexus, how uncomfortable that is. But I knew it was right for me. And I was like, why would I do something you tell me I should do when I know that's not right for me?
How do you understand like those questions now, as far as like how it relates to young people? Like you're talking to your boyfriend's sons and thinking about yourself.
Yeah. Like how I think it relates to the younger generations.
Yeah. Or even just, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have way more empowerment messages. We have empowerment messages out there for girls.
Yeah.
In a way we didn't really have in the 80s for us. I mean, we had like tomboys and stuff like that, but it was more like be like a boy type of thing. I don't know. I think the younger generations, because of technology and because of COVID time, have less emotional intelligence.
Interesting.
And I think they have less resilience around trusting themselves in uncomfortable situations. And I think you end up with two things there. One, I think they stay home more and they are less social, which is not good for their mental and emotional health overall and being online. So I think they are more scared and they avoid things. And then I would presume, and I'm just surmising here, that in social situations, they're just not going to have the skills. So they would be more likely to give in to peer pressure potentially.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always so impressed by the younger generation and like feeling like they have way more emotional intelligence. And I'm wondering if I'm just like seeing my friends' kids who like that sample size.
Right. Your friends would know how to instill this in their kids. So I think we have way more awareness around mental and emotional health, like way, way more. But it doesn't necessarily seem to be going hand in hand with skills and resilience around these topics. The things that we really need to be able to be out in the world and living full, messy lives to figure out who we are and who we want to be, and then really be able to have the depth of connections that are most important. So that's my thought.
Okay. Well, so I'm curious to hear about this like evolution for you too, where it started with like sexual health and went into more mindfulness and how that all came together.
Yeah, I think because, like I said, when I first moved out here, I was actually finishing my dissertation from afar. And I didn't like some of those answers that I was, sociology, academia, more sort of black and white, not so touchy-feely. And then here I was getting these answers to these questions around sexual empowerment for women, and it was all very touchy-feely. I was like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And then when I moved out to San Diego, and I just dove. Basically, I hardly had any money and I was finishing my dissertation from afar. And so every free class I could take, especially if they had a meal afterwards, great. So I went to the Hare Krishna centers and I like went to all sorts of places and did meditation and mindfulness classes and vegetarian meals. And actually, I wasn't vegetarian yet, but I have been now for like 19 years. So honestly, I just started doing it that way. And I was curious. I had had a little introduction to meditation before, never to mindfulness though. So once I started learning these and then practicing it myself and every morning doing some meditations and doing some writing on these topics and just reading all of these books and realizing how much it was helping me and then realizing, oh, right, this is at the core of sexual health.
Okay. Yeah.
This truly is. And especially for women around our bodies and around asking for condom use, all knowing our bodies, knowing that we're worthy of orgasm, recognizing our desire, overcoming shame, being in touch with our pleasure, being able to communicate that, not faking orgasm, knowing that we have a right to masturbation, knowing that we have a right to say no in a sexual situation if it's not right for us. Like all of that stuff at the core of that certainly is good education, but it's also your sense of self and building skills. And like we need, the more we practice mindfulness to study our own patterns and our emotions and our blocks and our fears and insecurities and our ickiest emotions and how they feel inside of us, that is epitome to me of skill building, because then and empowerment, because when we study what's actually happening in the moment and triggering our patterns, and we pull apart those pieces, we get to stay present in the moment. And now we get to make a new choice that wasn't even possible before.
Yeah, totally. I think part of how I'm like relating to it is I'm thinking of when you described like your whole like early 20s and stuff. And I'm thinking like, okay, where was my mind in my early 20s and like my own sort of like understanding of myself and my own like relationship with sex and everything too is I understand it all like through this sort of modality of like complex trauma. It was coming from a place of fear that like, if I don't play this right, if I don't do this right, I'm going to be rejected or unaccepted. And so I have to like play a role. If I ask for something that I'm not sure if the other person would want to give it, or like if it comes out weird or something.
And then you could be rejected and then alone.
Yeah.
And then we're fundamentally unlovable or something like that.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, like all of that. Yeah. I never quite put it into those terms, but it just sort of, it was almost just like a wall there, like I couldn't emotionally see past that, whatever that tension was. And it just kept me from being myself and really understanding my own self in that regard. So it was very much and then that mindfulness is just a whole other thing that was like, I couldn't even go anywhere near that.
No, I get it. In my 20s, it would not. I wouldn't have. It just wouldn't have made sense to me. And I had an interesting experience. You know, Pema Chodron's work as a Buddhist nun, and some of her books, like The Places That Scare Us, I think, or When Things Fall Apart, like those two books. I had an experience. Would have been 2016, so like 9 years ago. I dated a man, brief, like 2 or 3 months, but like amazing man, like. And it was so intense emotionally for both of us. And I got super angry. It was like I was in my early 20s again, actually. Now that I think of it, like those journals, I was like, oh, yeah, that's how I got again. But I was like 41 or 42. And I kept seeking. I was like, I have such a angsty, yearning, like ongoing ickiness inside of me when I can't get the time I want with this man who had a busy job and young kids, or I haven't heard from back from him via text. And I was like losing my shit and was not the best version of me. And I kept seeking somebody's got to have some wisdom and knowledge to help me with this. Like who? And I kept looking online. And finally I ended up pulling out a Pema Chodron book. When Things Fall Apart, and somebody had given it to me like 7 years earlier. I got it. I remember opening it and reading some of it. It didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't, like it was, but this was literally answering all my questions. It was speaking exactly to that yearning angst I had in me that I didn't know what to do with. And so I like those things that it's like, right, like mindfulness in my early 20s wouldn't have made sense. But when I learned about it at 30, when I had just moved, I was like, oh, and then I could see it through the context, of my relationships, but also then through my sexual health teaching. So I like these things that over time you go back to the same thing, but like we've pulled back more layers of who we are. And then all of a sudden we get it in ways, in a whole different depth. And we come back 5 or 10 years later, and then we've got all new insights. So I love that around this personal growth work, around mindfulness work. And and especially like someone like Pema's books are just they're so helpful in that way, because I was like, oh, I clearly am not alone. Like, she's written a whole book that is literally speaking to the aching in my heart. Like, yes, this is a human suffering thing. Got it.
Yeah. Doesn't she start off one of her books talking about that for herself too? I might be wrong. I might be thinking of somebody else.
There's something I think about a husband like leaving her, and that like he's in the driveway or something, and then she starts throwing shit at him, I think, or something. Like, is that? I think so.
I think so.
She's great.
Yeah.
How down to earth she is and real, and she like swears in her books, and I was like, oh, I love her. Yeah.
Just like the down Buddhist nun.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as I love doing this podcast, sad truth of it all is that doesn't pay the bills. It actually costs me money to make this podcast. But that's okay. I love doing it, so we're doing it. So what does pay the bills for me is I help individuals and organizations leverage the power of storytelling for leadership and persuasion. This is the work I do, and I want to tell you about it real quick here. For organizations, a lot of times the work is very much focused on fundraising for nonprofits, or developing a narrative strategy for the important messages that they want to get out in their campaigns. It can also be about developing leadership and communication skills amongst the team that you've already got working within your organization. For individuals, a lot of my work revolves around helping develop a narrative-based communication approach for those high-leverage career moments that come up from time to time, like giving a public talk, interviewing for a new position, integrating into a new role at a new company, or making the leap for yourself to jump into entrepreneurship, and how you talk about the work that you do with the external audiences there too. These are very much the moments that can have a huge impact on your career. And by utilizing storytelling and narrative, you can not only communicate a more resonant message about what it is that you're doing, but also one that's going to stick. So if this is intriguing to you and you want to know more, you can check out my website, storycultureconsulting.com. I'll have a free tool on there that's available for download, or you can check out the show notes too. I'll have the same tool down there that you can grab too. Once again, that's storycultureconsulting.com. And now back to the show. Okay. You can talk all day. So I do want to get a little bit more of a sense of like.
I know. We had like questions we were going to talk about. I don't know if we've talked about any of them.
Well, it's all right. No, but we are kind of like, I've got them right here. I'm like watching, like, okay, got somebody else.
Okay.
But one of the things that I'm kind of curious about is like, because tentative title for this podcast is leading the narrative. And so one of the things I'd like to talk to my guests about too is just how you think about the work you're doing on a mission and a purpose and a vision level. Like, what's the change that you want to see and that you want to create? And you've hinted at a lot of this, but.
Yeah. And I think actually that's where when I started talking, I was talking about this. Yeah. I think of my mission to be, if you look at like sex and emotional intimacy and connection, these are fundamentally just things. I mean, the sex part is fundamentally things that animals do. So it is incredibly natural in that way. And then emotional intimacy and the depth and warmth of our closest emotional connections, that literally is the thing that matters most to us as humans. At the end of their lives, people aren't regretting that they didn't work harder or make more money. It was around like the courage to be more vulnerable and authentic and to prioritize depth and warmth in relationships. So, our longevity research keeps showing that. Our regrets on the deathbed research shows that. So fundamentally, this stuff is so important to us as humans and so foundational, yet we have so much shame and stigma and bullshit and misinformation and taboo and blocks around it. So for me, my purpose and mission is to create safe spaces for people to open up and be vulnerable and authentic and pull back the layers of their fears and shame and embarrassment and insecurities and misinformation and how they've been hurt in the past, give them a space to shine a bright light on it, and then help them create a path forward through mindfulness and self-compassion and compassion for others, through vulnerability, and then a lot of skill building. So big picture, it's to reduce shame and stigma and misinformation and increase happiness and depth of connection and meaning and sexual satisfaction.
Yeah. Okay. So this might seem like a crazy question, but I always like to ask this too, like, what would the world look like if all of that came together?
Oh my gosh. Well, we would not have some of the crazy political leaders that we have, because people would be like, why on earth would I want somebody like this to run our country or run our world when they are not in touch with kindness and compassion towards themselves or towards others? Like, we would just, when people behave badly, outside of being sociopaths, and that's like its own category, like I can't, like that's its own thing. So,
totally.
Which is an important thing, because there's a lot of CEOs and apparently priests and all sorts of folks that are actually sociopaths. And not that they have to be evil, but if you're not feeling empathy or able to feel empathy, I don't know what to do with that as like a practitioner, because that's at the core of all of my stuff.
Yeah.
People would live through kindness and forgiveness towards themselves and kindness and forgiveness towards others, and just wanting to ease suffering in themselves and others and give everybody an opportunity towards safety and connection and security and satisfaction and happiness in life. So I think we would not have the greed in the way that we have. We wouldn't have wars in the way we have. We wouldn't have, there'd be so much, I think, just much more compassion and kindness, and frankly, less anxiety and less depression,
totally.
and less all of that stuff, less probably a lot of chronic diseases, and better sex. There you go.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, and I think that's so interesting too. And you kind of hit it, like the political piece of it there too. Like, I mean, I see stuff going on in the news and it drives me just, bonkers. But I'm also like, and this kind of goes back to like some of the things you were talking about earlier. Like, I think when we first met each other, this was kind of right after I was getting my shit together. I think I was, I had my sort of transition in my mid 30s, and I see like a lot of these political guys too. And I can, as much as they drive me nuts, I'm also like, they hate themselves. They like straight up, like they hate themselves. They don't even
have
know.
like such high like insecurities, right? There's so much fear, because I think parts of there, I think there's very arrogant people who truly think they're great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But then still have a lot of insecurities. And then you have arrogant people who are absolutely hiding insecurities or hiding that they're, closeted gay people, so they stand up against gay people or something like that. So I think there's two different motivations, but I do think there tend to be insecurities under both. But sometimes folks, I think we have some leaders who truly think they're great people.
Yeah.
Like they really do. Now, it doesn't mean they don't have demons. It doesn't mean they don't have fears. It doesn't mean they don't have a thin skin sometimes. But I think they think they're great.
Yeah.
They're delusional.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess that's part of my point, though, because I think of like my own sort of evolution, mindfulness evolution is before that, I was very much, it was kind of all or nothing. Like I was like, I'm great or I'm terrible. And as I've been able to evolve a bit over time, I'm just in a much more level place all the time too. And so there's all this sort of say, like in a messed up way, I relate to those dudes. Like I remember being
Dude,
like,
I'd rather have you run in our country, Nathan. So I'm going to say go for it.
But now that like also like, you do the work though, and that motivation, you start feeling fine and centered in yourself in a way that we don't have to like be chasing the same way, right?
And that is true, right? We find that like what we prioritize and like status and other such things, like it shifts where our priorities are.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and I always like to kind of talk on like a narrative level too. Like I'm curious what you feel like are the sort of social narratives and stories that we're telling ourselves that are keeping us stuck in this place that we're in right now.
Yeah, you like sort of overall as a society.
Or even if you got
angst and division and all sorts of stuff. I think social media amplifies comparison to a point that none of our nervous systems are really capable of handling. Our brain, right? We do make comparisons, and we do, and we aspire to what we see out there and what we want or how we wish our lives was different. And when it's constantly in your face, these people doing amazing trips or having amazing lives or having, making all of this money or having these expensive things and houses, the amount that brings up jealousy and envy, and that then just can feel like a reflection to us of like, I'm not good enough or I can't do it. Like it's just not, and then combine that with then how the dopamine works of the endless scrolling on our phones, and then not choosing and be intentional about how we're spending our time and how we're connecting with others and what goals we're setting for ourselves and what positive relation and positive emotions we're choosing to cultivate. Like all these intentional aspects of what it is to design our lives step by step, and not that we have control over everything by any means, but to be intentional about who we want to be and who we want to surround ourselves with and how we want to show up to work and how we want to show up in friendships and relationships and what we want to improve on and learn about ourselves. All of that time and that energy and even that motivation, I think, can get sucked away from technology and social media. And because it's designed in a way that gives us those dopamine hits, sort of makes us feel sort of happy or satisfied in those moments, but is certainly not fulfilling at all. And I believe increases, anxiety and depression, and decreases depth of connections and listening and the Gottmans, John Gottman, is a leading researcher around sex and relationship, has been for like 40 or 50 years, just amazing research out of the University of Washington, and some really great books and information out there. And him and his wife, Julie, I believe, they have a concept called bids, accepting bids from your partner. And so like every time, if you're in a relationship and every time your partner, walks in the door and says, whew, I had a tough day, that's a bid for connection. Like that's a bid for you to say, oh my God, what happened? What's going on? Give me a hug. Tell me about it. Even you're reading something on your phone. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. That's a bid for connection. Or like my parents always do. It's like, oh my God, my mom will be like, Michael, come here. Look, there's a deer in the backyard. Or there's 3 deer in the backyard. Come look. And, or he puts his newspaper down. He gets up and does it. Or your partner reaches for your hand or wants to cuddle with you. All of those are tiny little bids. I call them like pennies. The little pennies our partners are putting in front of us. They seem inconsequential often, but over time they add up. And that's, I think, because of our phones and because of technology today, we are putting out less bids and we are picking up less bids. We're not recognizing others' bids. I think that happens in friendships. I watch friends out to lunch with each other at a coffee shop or something, and people are on their phones and somebody's telling a story and the other people are only half listening. That feels shitty. Like that is not, none of this is good for us. So I think universally we're missing each other's bids for connection. And not that, frankly, people post on Facebook like, hey, I'm having a tough day. Send me some cute animal photos. And I do think that's genuinely helpful, genuinely connecting. But at least in our in-person interactions, which truly really are the most important, at least I think for big picture sustainable happiness, it's just not happening in the same way.
Yeah, that hits home. It resonates. And I've been, as you're saying this, I'm like there's like a bunch of texts in my phone that I need to respond to. But in a way, like it is weird. It is sort of it is part of the dynamic of our world today too, where we have this sort of access to each other and ability to send a lot of bids out there also. And then we could be on the receiving end of a lot of bids. And
yeah, it is interesting how much texts have replaced bids now. But then it all feels so overwhelming because we're sort of like, normally it would just be the people in your immediate vicinity that could put out a bid. And now it's like literally the entire world.
Yeah,
could
totally.
put out a bid between social media and email and texting, like literally. So, and then it becomes too much. Yeah, it's actually interesting. I hadn't thought of it in that way. That's a helpful insight. Yeah. So so I'm going to ask how are you feeling at this point? I was just mentioning like being in relationships and all. You mentioned in passing before that you're not really dating or feeling like dating. I'm curious what's going on for you.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So, I think a big part of it is I'm very just focused on, my business right now too. And like that is taking up so much mental and emotional bandwidth. And I think, I got out of a relationship a couple of years ago. And one of the big challenges that kept coming up in that relationship too was that I was trying to get a business started, and it's terrible that like having to divide your attention that way. And it just felt like nobody was winning, And so I'm very much focused on my business that way too. So that's it. But it is interesting to also just like, all right, so I'm 48 and that drive isn't there either. Like before I was holding that drive away. Or push
and you mean sexual drive specifically?
Yeah, or just drive, like be with someone, anything.
Okay, but in a closely intimate, emotionally, physically way.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think about this in a couple different ways though too, because on one hand, it is like, I wonder, I've gotten older. It's a little bit of a hormonal thing, but also like I've done some healing work, and I'm less looking to like, fill an insecurity. Yeah, totally. And so I feel much more like balanced in that regard. So that's kind of the dilemma I'm dealing with, where like, what is actually happening here? What piece of this is good and what piece of this is like maybe concerning, right?
It's a really good question. Because the thing is, everything you're saying that makes absolute perfect sense. The work and the business thing, like, especially being entrepreneurs and, and figuring out like we need to pay bills and we need to get shit going. And that's just sort of ongoing, let alone with like starting a podcast like you are here. And you're doing it at a very high level of tech and everything else that you're doing and components, which is amazing. And that is so much work to do. So But that other piece that is interesting, you know, I've worked with clients over the years that when I have worked with them, like this one woman I could think of a while ago really helped her around her, like overcoming some childhood trauma and getting a sense of herself and her voice and feeling grounded and moving through some insecurities and building her self-esteem and self-worth. Her relationship to sex changed because sex for her was always a way of feeling affirmed in her relationship and feeling secure. And then when that motivation left, she was kind of like, oh, I don't actually, where's my motivation for sex now? Especially because they've been in a long-term relationship with them where the neurochemicals of desire, that cocktail in the beginning of a relationship had long faded. So that's a very real thing to figure out. I guess I wonder for you, if I may ask,
Yes.
do you like being in relationship with another person? Do you like having that partnership, that challenge, that comfort, that partner in crime to move through the world with type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question too. And that's one, there's not like a really easy answer. And one of the things I've learned about myself too is I very much have like that avoidant tendency in relationships where like I almost feel comfortable by myself. But I have been in very wonderful relationships in my life. So, and I have enjoyed it when I've been there. And so part of how
do you feel like you lose yourself in those relationships, or do you feel like you are yourself and then you get to blossom into even more authentically yourself?
No, it's a challenge for sure. Like I feel like I'm fighting to keep myself, but like, well, that's just it. Like there's all these things that are like sort of fighting with each other. So like I see it, like some blossoming is happening, but also I'm losing some of myself, but also like I'm trying to hold on to myself. And then I'm not sure, like, is this letting go a little bit of myself? Is this like part and parcel with the blossoming or part and parcel with the losing, you know?
Oh, it's such a good question. Yeah. Yeah. And how do we know that inner truth in ourselves?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Do you feel like you got to experiment in a healthy, solid relationship, you putting up some boundaries or speaking up for yourself and being like, hey, I feel like I'm losing myself a little bit here. Can we work on this as a team of what to do? Do you feel like you had some good experiences with that?
So there's a lot of things I've learned since my last relationship that I wish I would have learned prior to it. You know, and I think that's the case too. A lot of times, like, you know, this has been my experience. I don't know if it's like the same for you. It's just like after every relationship, I learned the things that like could have saved that one. The way you're like,
well, and that's what when I found that Pema Chodron book, I was like, why did I not find this on my shelf 2 months earlier? It would have made such a difference for me. So, yeah.
And so one of the things, you know, one of the big kind of pieces of feedback I've gotten from, you know, past relationships is that it could be a little bit chaotic around me. And when we're relating on the level that you and I know each other and like with friends and stuff, it's easy for me to hold it together. But just in my own, I spend a lot of time by myself, and that levels me. But when I'm not getting that alone time, my emotions just start swinging all over the place. And I'm usually able to manage it, but then all this energy is going into managing it. And then I get exhausted and it just starts this like cycle.
Yep. No, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
So one of the things I learned recently though, was to kind of put this all in the context of complex trauma, to see that, and mindfulness is to see that like these are, and again, this is the context I go back to a lot, but these are sort of survival instincts because I don't have that core sense of safety in relationships. Because I've had this conversation with myself all the time, like, why am I so freaking out, or why am I so upset? I have this amazing person here with me, but something's going on in my body that's like freaking out and upset and like wants to run away, like literally run away. And I could never quite parse what that was, and I could never even like explain what that was, because how do I tell a girlfriend like I love you, I want to run away at the same time?
Right. No, but when you say complex trauma that gets wired into your brain and into your nervous system, it totally makes sense. And and it makes sense to me too, that it's like it's hard to explain because it probably feels so just primal in you, like for your primal safety and sense of safety.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you think, what have you learned that you think in the future would be able to help you in those situations?
Well, just one of the big things is just that complex trauma, like context of understanding, like that's what's going on. That's why you're having like these conflicting emotions that make zero sense, but they actually make perfect sense.
Totally does. Yeah.
And one of the things I also came to realize, I've always had this sort of like strange relationship with boundaries too. And I've noticed that I've been very good at like almost too good at holding boundaries away, but then there's major holes in it. But then also I came to realize that I was also a person that can push boundaries and not quite realize, usually like kind of like emotional and time based. And I didn't quite realize that. And what was really difficult was, is I was trying to figure out like what that was. It just realizing like that I was upsetting people I was in relationships with in this certain way. What's happening? What am I doing there that's causing them to be upset? And I had to figure out what that was. And that was that I was like kind of pushing boundaries, and they couldn't really articulate it to me either. And then the hard part was then when I researched it, like it was really hard to be like, okay, there's lots of great books about how to enforce boundaries, but like, what do I even like Google to be like, no, I'm the person that like pushes boundaries. Like,
right. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And what was difficult was that like what I found was like narcissist, and I looked that up and it's like, but no, that's not me.
Right.
And like, but that freaked.
Are you the child of narcissist?
No, not that I don't think so.
Okay. Because that can replicate itself also.
For sure. And yeah, my therapist is like, no, that you're not.
Right. No, not at all.
But what I found was it was codependence. And I never related to codependence because I'm like an avoidant. I'm like pushing people away.
Oh, that's complicated.
Yeah. But it very much is, that avoidance comes from like that the codependence is like a fear, and so it's complicated. So you can see why like I just wasn't figuring this out, right?
Yes. Exactly. And you've got these competing things happening at the same time, which then, and then you're trying to manage that, which no doubt is freaking exhausted. Like I would want to tap out also. Like, I need some space here.
Yeah.
I am exhausted.
Yeah.
But you have this like lovely person who isn't creating this,
Totally.
like it's all happening. Yeah.
Well, and then the real thing I realized about this in retrospect, and like, this could be a little bit of like a humble brag, but like it set a very high bar for being in a relationship for me. And so everybody I was in a relationship with, like I thought was amazing. So, but that makes the conflict like that much harder.
But then does that make you less than them? Like, were they up on a pedestal and you had to try to aspire to be like them? Or?
A little bit, but that made me feel safe too. Like the fact that they could like leave at any point felt safer to me than like being
a total equal with them.
Yeah. Or even like being the one that they were coming to, like having the responsibility of them being more into me than I was into them.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can see why you're like, I'm going to focus on my business right now.
Totally. What? The interesting thing is, okay, here we go. It's right here. I found this group.
Oh yeah, Codependence Anonymous.
Yeah. And one of the things they have, like, 6 archetypes of codependence, and one of them is that avoidant one. And I'm reading it. I'm like, I went to just kind of randomly heard about this. I went to my first meeting and I was looking through the material because it's just like AA or Al-Anon, but it's codependence.
Yeah.
And I'm reading them like, I'm all of these things. I'm all of this is all. And
how helpful.
Yeah, totally. And it's a sort of it's very validating, but also like frustrating when that comes up, because you're like, this has been written this whole time. Like,
oh no, you're like, why did somebody else direct me to this?
Right? Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Got it. Have you found, because I'm thinking about things like plant medicine and like psychedelic journeys and like breath work, holotropic breath work and things like that seem to help rewire our brains and our nervous systems. What could take 5 years of therapy, you do in a really intense but well facilitated weekend with somebody. What are your thoughts around that?
One thing I have tried is ketamine, and I've done these online. Yeah, they're a little bit. I think people have mixed feelings about them.
So that basically somebody like an expert is watching you online do it at home. They're checking in on you.
So I did one that was more of like it was like microdosing. So I was getting small doses and I was taking it daily. But I remember telling my therapist I had started it, and she was like, "They send that to you in the mail?" It's like, yes, they do.
I know, which is weird. For whatever reason, that one is legal and nothing else is.
Yeah, it's so strange. But it's been this whole interesting journey of when I just decided to do that on a lark. Another friend of mine that's a therapist, she had mentioned how she tried it, and it was like, all of her trauma just went away for a week,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, but then was she able to integrate and like sustain
Yeah,
it?
I think so to agree. But so for myself, it was fascinating because I started taking it, and there was this moment where for about a week, just like all of the trauma just went away. The world was so quiet. I was so calm. I was actually like, it's actually kind of a stressful week, like objectively speaking. And I was just rolling with it in a way
Got
that
it.
I couldn't before. Or that I could before, but I was just it would have.
It was always so angst filled.
Yeah, it's angst filled. I would just get, very anxious. And I call it the monkey mind, where I just
Yep.
get really hyper focused. And so that I had that experience, and like, holy crap, this is like this. So this is what it could be. This is like what life could be like,
That's amazing.
But then the really fascinating part about it was as the anxiety started to seep back in, and to feel it coming back and see it coming back, and then also like recognize how little control over it I had. And so that really blew my mind. And
Was it depressing? Was it empowering or disempowering? Or
it was empowering. And so what it did is like, so, okay, like, I think the challenge up until this point was I didn't really know that this was all going on. I just thought this was the world. This was life. And I didn't know that I had like anxiety. Just every once in a while I freak out and have to go to the emergency room because I think I'm having a heart attack, But like, I didn't know. And it sort of drives me nuts that nobody along the way was like, hey, you might want to look up like complex trauma or look up these things.
got it.
So that really was like, okay, now I see what the difference is now. I see like what it could be and what's going on for me now. And it made the big push is like, okay, I need to get on some kind of medication because I've been trying to do all these mindfulness techniques and things like that over the years. And it was such a huge hurdle to get to that place. But then when I started having that experience of like, this is like the baseline I could start from, like I could be playing on easy mode.
Oh, yeah. So how much have medications made a shift?
Huge
then?
difference. Huge.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good.
So I got on like medication for anxiety and ADHD, and those are the two main ones. And like
and you feel like it's like bumped your
for sure.
level, your starting point.
Yeah,
so you're not sort of always feeling sort of sucked down.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And like
that's awesome.
All the energy that's getting drained away for like keeping myself sane is not. I have that energy back now.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
That's kind of been the journey for me since. So that's why I'm not dating right now.
Oh, that's right. That's where we started.
I'm just sitting with this.
That's awesome. Which is great though, but get your footing in this way and who you are now that you have this bolstered foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So this has been so much fun. And like now I'm like, I have like a bajillion more things to talk to you about, but also, I want to be respectful of your time and my time and like everybody listeners'
and our
time.
listeners' time.
Yeah.
I know. So we should do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. We'll just do a part 2 sometime. Yeah. Totally.
Perfect.
How can people find you and learn more about you?
Yeah. My main hub for everything is my Dr. Jenn's Den website. So it's DrJennsden. .com, and my book is on there. I did a podcast for 6 years that just ended a few months ago, but I have a blog, my media interviews, my TEDx talks, all this stuff. That's my main hub, and you can find my social media links on there also. But if you're on Instagram or X or TikTok or whatever, it's all Dr. Jenn's Den as well, spelled the same way.
You claimed it.
DrJennsden. I know, that's all mine. In the Den with Dr. Jenn. So, find me, please. And if this, conversation resonated with you, please find me online, follow me, because that's very helpful to me, to be able to have more folks out there, being part of the conversations.
Anything else? Any last things you want to add or final thoughts?
I think, what are my final thoughts based on everything we talked about here? I would say, whatever you feel like you're mentally or emotionally struggling with out there, like, you are not alone. Others, they haven't lived your exact life, but I guarantee they're having some of the same emotions and stories that they're telling themselves or in a similar stuck place. So one, you're not alone, you're not broken, you're not abnormal, and there is help. And, we've talked about so many different things, whether it's mindfulness practices and meditation or therapists or coaches or ketamine or antidepressants and anti-anxiety, supportive networks, friends. There's so much out there. And frankly, often a combination of those things, what's most helpful. So start reaching out to the resource that you have. I frankly use ChatGPT for ideas. Be like, I'm struggling with this. Give me 10 resources to help me start getting unstuck. I wouldn't use ChatGPT as your therapist or your coach. I mean, honestly, it can be helpful, but it could be harmful. But use it as brainstorming on resources to help yourself get unstuck.
It's a resource.
It's a resource, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
It can be incredibly valuable, but don't let it replace what a human does best.
Thanks so much for joining me here, Dr. Jenn.
Thank you. And congrats on launching this new podcast. It's neat what you're creating here. These were some very different, I do tons of podcasts, and these were some very different conversations than I usually have, which was delightful for me.
Okay,
so
good. Well, it's good because, I want to have different conversations.
Exactly.
All right. Well, you take care. And we'll have to do a part 2 one of these days soon too.
Awesome. Perfect. I'm in.
All right.
Ciao.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode with Dr. Jenn. Big thanks to her for being such a real and genuine conversation for our podcast here. And you can find out more about Dr. Jenn's work at Dr. Jenn's Den. So that's DrJennsDen.com. So basically Jenn with 2 N's. You can also follow her on social media at Dr. Jenn's Den. That's her handle and pretty much everything. And I'll put links to all this in the show notes. And if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you listen again soon.